I suppose when you're asking about how I started, first of all, behaviour management course was vital to my survival in a difficult school. And secondly, going on music for yourself in your class, it gave me all the confidence I needed to think, yes, I can do this. I did 8 years of piano lessons, getting to about grade 6. So I did all the formal arpeggios and chords and scales and blah, blah, blah. But I had 2 music teachers who'd cornered the market in uninspiring, and I begged to be released from them at the age of 15. But neither of them had entered me for any exams. I can't say conclusively this is what I achieved. That's what I just presume. So I'm here with a degree in Russian. I've teacher trained in English and drama. I've gone to teach in the school as an English teacher. I became head of PSE for a bit, which I really liked. And my favourite of all was meeting the same children in different ways, teaching them music. And then when the school closed in 1996, I became a peripatetic teacher of the music service. And one of my colleagues just said to me, "And what's she doing here? She's not even a musician." And so I was a bit hurt by this, because I thought I demonstrated my musical abilities quite well. And also, it was more about my teaching skills. I wasn't there to be a better musician than the kids. I was there to bring them up. You know, my skills were in teaching, the children's skills. They were always better players than me, and I didn't mind that. However, I was galvanised, I thought, into taking my theory. So I went to Jan Holstock, this wonderful composer, special needs educator, music educator, and I did my grade 5 theory. Because I just concentrated on what I was good at, which was being a music teacher for children with difficult, challenging behaviour. So you always, people want you. So although I didn't have any music qualifications, that was never important. And I think I should emphasise that. Don't feel you have to go to music college. I see loads of people come out of music college, go into teaching, haven't a clue. You know, teaching is an art, it's a skill, it's a trade, it's something that you have to learn to do and concentrate on. You can't say, do this, and it happens. It just doesn't happen like that. And I get very frustrated that musicians think, because they're musicians, that they are therefore teachers. So I went on this very prescriptive and very difficult behaviour management course, and it works. So I would encourage anybody to train in some way. The Musicians Union have created a course on which I've written the behaviour management and classroom management component, and I would recommend you do that course if you can't get into teacher training college. But then the doors opened. The doors never stopped opening after that. Having the best teacher, which my French teacher was, and quite a few of my English teachers was, is absolutely invaluable. The teacher who told me to stop singing ruined my singing career. I started off as a teacher. I signed a form, yes, I agreed to be your teacher, and they paid me money every month, and I never thought anything about it. And then I became a peripatetic teacher for Leeds Council, and the same thing happened. They kept on paying me money. And then some schools wanted some heads of music, somebody to stand in as a head of music. And there was an Ofsted calling, so Leeds Education said, I said, why don't I do it? Because it was my children's school. And I said, you can't be released. Anyway, a bit of toing and froing, and I ended up standing as head of music at one school. And then I realised what I always wanted to do was go where I personally was needed, what skills I had. So what I think I'm good at is thinking on my feet and adapting to a situation. I was paid just regularly, and then I had to find my own work, and I have never got used to that. So I am getting steadily poorer, but I've never got steadily unhappier. I'm really pleased that I've made choices that made me do what I think I'm good at and what's a good use of my time. So I don't go to work to earn money, although I do realise that's a good idea. Anyway, so I didn't really want to give my heart to another school. So I got the job with the music service. The head of service had watched me teach these difficult children using my behaviour management skills. And so he asked me if I would go and join up with my colleague Diane Patterson, that I wrote this book with, about teaching with additional needs. And she would do all the schools where people had sensory impairments and other forms of additional needs. And I would teach all the schools where they were excluded for challenging behaviour. Anyway, so, and then the rest of it was steel pan development. I went around teaching steel pans in different schools. Where I worked in Seacroft was the hardest school I ever worked in. So when people say, oh, such and such a hard school, I went, no, it's not. You couldn't get harder than Foxwood. You know, I was known for it, and that was right. So that meant that everything after that was always easier. But then in the same week, somebody phoned me up from South Wales and said, oh, I've got your number from so-and-so, blah-de-blah. And 3 months later, I was doing 2 days a week in South Wales, setting up their steel pans in the valleys around Newport, staying with one of the teachers, picking up my hire car, driving around Pontypool and all the rest of it. And that was really lovely. And also advising them what steel pans, because I had become a steel pan specialist by this time completely. I'd give talks around the country, quite a lot of them, especially for Carol Lindsay from Lindsay Music, from Schools Music Association. I've talked for NAME, the National Association of Music Educators. I've talked about these skills that you need, and I think that's very important. If you go into teaching, do not think that being enthusiastic or knowing about music is going to get you anywhere. And I think that can be quite disheartening for people, you know, because you're not going to get the best out of them unless you think about it. You think about it, you learn about it. So when I started at Foxwood, I spent my whole time thinking, how can I be better? So then I set up the pans for Manchester Grammar School. I've been across to Halifax to set up steel pans. I've been to York to reset up their steel pans. And last year, I got invited by Lille to go and help them set up their steel pans. So the present head of service went to Lille, which is our twin city, saw the steel pans and said, I know somebody who could help you. 2 months later, I'm in this lovely hotel in France, meeting the head of the conservatoire, who wouldn't really let me go back to England until I had promised to come back with a band. So 3 months later, with 2 teachers and 3 of my older youth band, the Leeds Silver Steel Sparrows, we went back to Lille. Funnily enough, I have found all the way through my career that the best thing to do is team up with somebody, to have a partner. So while I was at Foxwood, Charlotte Emery entered my life, and she had come from Beckett University, which was called Beckett College at the time or something. And she was a singer and an artist. In fact, she drew all the pictures for my books. And I said, oh, you're a singer, so what you need to do is play steel pans and help me be the music teacher. And we had this amazing partnership for years and years. We just supported each other. And I think I got a lot of strength from having that partnership. And then I met Pablo Phillips, who you may know actually. He worked in a band with Om. He was local to Hyde Park. And he was a mathematician, and he was a stickler for accuracy, where I was a bit more, hey, let's just do it. It'll be fine, you know. If the kids are playing with enthusiasm, it'll sound good. And he was going, no, I just want to know exactly what chord to put there. So the combination of his being a stickler for detail and my massive enthusiasm and confidence made us a real dream team. And we invented a system of listening for GCSE music that the Ofsted person said was the best thing she'd ever seen, and we should publish it. And it is in the new book, at last, 20 years later. And then when the school closed, I met Diane Patterson. So in my special needs teaching, I've got another partner. And you can't do without that mutual support. You have to have one person that you look after and they look after you. In the steel pan world, several of my ex-students have also become partners. Having strong partnerships and looking after other people is a good thing. Well, besides being a teacher, which was my main ambition, right from the age of 5, in fact, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, I've also become a musician. So after that time when a colleague who resented my presence there, and I wasn't a trained musician, and I didn't dare to hope that I would ever call myself a musician. After about 10 years or so of working for the music service, I went around buzzing, I'm working for the music service, it's too exciting. And then eventually I said, well, probably I'm a musician. I'm not a great musician, but I am still a musician. I play gigs all the time because people always want steel bands. So at the weekends, you know, in summer. In June and July, it's just every weekend, get the minibus out, put the kids into it, get the trailer out, drive off everywhere. And that's been going for, well, ages, over 20 years actually. Work-life balance is rubbish. But I think if you're going to be good at something, you have to put the time in. You have to attend to detail. Can I just quote you what Paul Smith, one of my lovely colleagues, said to me? I saw him talking to a group of drummers and he said, do you know, musicians don't go in it for the money. He said, they go in it for this. He said, applause. Applause is what we do it for. It's great. It makes you feel really good. And, you know, he's absolutely right. You go in it for that feeling of applause. And the thing is, applause doesn't put money on the table. But it makes you think you could manage without, not money on the table, food on the table, but it makes you think that you could do without food, which you can't do. So, yeah, I've got less and less interested in money. I've never been very good with it. But, you know, sometimes I look at the situation I'm in and think, oh, heavens above, I've been through all my career and I'm poorer than I was when I first started teaching. But I kind of think I'm richer in these life experiences. I love standing in front of a class, and I do love standing on stage as well. Number one top tip, train to teach. Do not assume that because you have the knowledge that you can just then pass it on. You need to engage with where the children or the adults, teaching adults is another skill that you need to learn about. You need to know where they are, what's their past experience, how well they take things in, whether they're the sort of learners who like reading it or the sort of learners that like listening or maybe watching you demonstrate. Find out as much as you can about your students. Number two, don't give up. If you think you're right and you do something really well and then somebody's jealous of you and tries to put you down, and I think this does happen in our industry quite a lot, if you know what you're doing is the right way of doing it, just don't give up, plough on, accept the defeats, and just keep going. My third top tip is if you want to be a music teacher, you don't need to be the best musician. You do need to be a good teacher. Well, when I first came to Leeds to do my teacher training, I was really excited to live near the Royal Park pub and to be able to go and see loads of bands all the time. I joined a comic women's band called She, He, and we were absolutely rubbish, but we really enjoyed it. It was me, Jackie and Sally. And then me and Charlotte and a couple of others had a band called the Wirrits. If you do music, it opens up so many opportunities, especially if you don't limit yourself. If you play music and teach music, and you do music all the time, it's like your hobby and your job are more or less the same thing. You learn confidence and you learn presentation skills. You learn to cooperate as a team. You learn to communicate with others. You learn to listen to others. All the stuff that music does for you. There will always be a place for music. And the more the government trashes music education and reduces it, the more people will become aware that the loss of music is losing children so much other things. So, for example, learning to play music develops all those cognitive skills that helps you with other subjects. But it would take a few years to try it out and a bit mean on the kids who've lost the music. But they have done lots of surveys and research in America and up in Edinburgh University where they've deprived children of a music education compared to a cohort which wasn't deprived, and found out that the children who had 4 English lessons a week were worse at taking the English exam than the children who had 3 English lessons and 1 music lesson. So there's lots and lots of research and evidence to show that music is good for you, and it's going to take a while before it occurs to people in power that this is, you know, they should take some notice of it. And really, you shouldn't do music for that. You should do it because it is just good for your soul. It's good for everything. It should be part of your life.